Okay.
All right, go ahead. So, what do you want to know about Cuba?
So, for this topic, do you think it'd be strong if we run an argument on, say, or one part of a negative case or argumentation line could be that it will not benefit the Cuban people, the regular citizens, but rather the money and all of that would actually go only to the cartels and to the Castro regime.
Okay, well, first of all, they're not normally considered. There's not normally thought to be cartels really in Cuba. Cartels are in other parts of Latin America, but not Cuba particularly.
Okay.
Because Cuba's authoritarian government doesn't want the competition from organized crime. Um, there really aren't any drug cartels in Cuba. But if you're saying that, are you saying ending the embargo or maintaining the embargo? It is this. It denies the money to the normal people and just gives it to the rich.
Ending the embargo.
Okay. So I think if you say ending the embargo, you want to take that approach, but your warrant should be that American corporations will come in and exploit all the resources of the island, thereby robbing the island of its wealth and delegating its people to peasants.
Okay.
Or I guess not delegating, reducing their people to peasants. Have I got any response from Felix yet? Let's see. Yeah, okay, good.
Natural resources in Cuba are nickel, iron, ore, cobalt, chromium, silica, copper, and petroleum. Mm.
Hold on. Still trying to get you. Trying to get more characters. All right. Okay. Pew, 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 pew. All right, so what's the next thing we're talking about?
I don't know what. I'm just trying to look up cards on that argument line right now.
All right, well, I think you should put in Google this: liberalizing the Cuban economy or post-Castro Cuban economy. One of those two things.
Okay.
Both of them are there.
On February 19, 2007, the pages announced that he would neither aspire nor accept a Cuban presidency. The post-Fidel era has begun and it means dramatic changes. And it will appoint the head of Council of State. The President of Cuba is widely expected to name.
Thank God for my kids.
Alright.
Alright. So, what do you come up? Let me Google it too, and we'll see concurrently. Google, post-Castro economic reform. Yeah. Alright, this is an interesting one. Alright, so look, one big argument in this, I think, is going to be that one big argument is going to be that Cuba's getting better in the status quo. Now, you can use this in one of two ways. You could say it's getting better and the embargo is just slowing it down, or it's getting better and that's why we should keep up the status quo and not change things because that's just going to make it worse. Okay? Two ways to say it's getting better. You understand?
No.
I'll repeat. I'll repeat.
Okay.
In general, it's generally thought to be the case that the Cuban economy, Cuba's getting better, that it's getting more liberalized, the economy's getting more open, that you can trade with them more effectively. So
Yeah.
there's two ways to spend that, though, right? One way you spend it is in the status quo, we're seeing improvement. So why change the status quo? Leave the embargo where it is. The other way to spend it is the embargo is just slowing down and getting better. We need to take away the embargo. The fact that it's getting better is proof that they're making the changes we wanted to make anyway, and they need more economic opportunities if they're going to be able to liberalize their economy adequately. So you can spend it in two different ways, either direction. However, it's also possible to say, actually, the Cuba's getting worse, not better. And if you're going to make that argument, that's that link I just put there. Let's go over it together. We'll take turns reading. I'll do some reading, and you do some reading, and we'll read the shit out loud. Pya, pya, pya. When U.S. President Barack Obama made his historic March 2016 visit to Havana, Cuban expectations of better times to come were high. As the United States goes to the polls to select its slow pace of reform in Cuba is raising questions about President Raul Castro's legacy. Frustrations began to set in with energy cuts paralyzing production. The economy shrinking, the country's economic updating process seemingly going in reverse. Alright, so I'm going to cut this little card right here and upload it right now.
Should I continue reading, Trust?
Yeah, keep reading.
What is derailing Cuba's much-anticipated reform course? More questions than answers. With the economy forecast to decrease by 2.9% in 2016, the country's socialist government is reimposing price controls and putting brakes on the emerging small-scale private sector. Is Cuba's backtracking from Venezuela's drastic reduction in oil shipments to the country, forcing it to slash imports and adopt austerity measures? Or does Havana fear losing control as White House policies for strangulation to embrace?
Yo, Lyle, why'd you
Perhaps
pause
the
your
retrenchment
camera?
result of what?
Why'd you pause your camera?
Oh, no, sorry. Remember, I'm not using it's not all connected together, so it's not my computer, so I can't pull it up separately.
Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. I'll read. You follow. You can just listen for the moment. If you can't bring it up, I guess. Actually, you can follow. Just go ahead and pause and follow along. It's fine. Let me do some of the reading though. Oh, that's right. I was doing this. All right, let me get this thing ready for cutting cards. Pyow. First I'm gonna pyow and then I'm gonna pyow all of the time. Pyow, 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 pyow. Cause if you love to pyow, You want to pow, then you will pow 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 pow.
Well, okay.
Are you reading it? Go ahead and read it and pause if you need to. I'm sorry, I didn't understand your computer situation.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it on my computer. Okay, so the answer probably is a combination of, or the returnment of the result of Raul Castro government gathering strength to finally tackle the most complex economic problem, overcoming the highly distorting coexistence of two competing currencies, the dollar-linked Cuban convertible peso and the greatly devalued Cuban peso. The answer probably is a combination of all three, according to a recent study assessing the prospect of Cuba's development model, which I undertook alongside other Europeans in Cuban scholars for the Third World Quarterly, the beginning of a very long journey. In Cuba, economic and political considerations go hand in hand. As Havana-based economist Ricardo Torres has stressed, in the 10 years since Raul Castro assumed office, the island's economic structure has indeed been substantially transformed. What's more, Raul's reforms over the past 8 years have not been ad hoc changes. They have formed part of a long-term strategy of gradual reform, backed by programmatic documents adopted at Communist Party's conferences. But unresolved contradictions in the economy have limited positive effects on growth and salaries. Torres concludes that it is becoming increasingly clear that Cuba's reforms over the past 8 years are just at the early stage of a very long journey. The most dramatic contradiction of the Cuban economy is the uncomfortable coexistence of two disparate currencies. State salaries are paid in CUP, averaging 687 pesos per month. At official currency exchange houses, less than 40 CUC or US $40. Since Cubans need to buy more and more everyday items, from Coca-Cola shampoo in a convertible currency, the chasm with their peso salaries widens. This is not only damaging the economy but also tearing apart the island's social fabric. Combining these two currencies will be monumentally difficult, with the implications for all sectors of the economy and society. It has long been on Raul's agenda. Some reports suggest that the often postponed monetary unification is set to occur before year's end. That may necessitate slashing imports not just to reduce Venezuelan supplies, but crucially to build up reserves that could defend the currency against foreseeable inflationary. It's not just the economy, stupid. In Cuba, political factors weigh very heavily. Lawrence Whitehead from Oxford University stressed that the puzzle of the exceptional resilience of the Cuban regime cannot be understood without taking into account its sources of legitimization and discursive justifications. For half a century, Havana's uncompromising stance against the U.S. played a key role in bolstering support for the socialist government, even when such political isolation meant hardship for the Cuban people. The recent reapproachment with Washington is a diplomatic victory, but normalization, and particularly decidedly warm welcome given to Obama, weakens this pillar of legitimization. Norwegian analyst Vegard Bye argues that Obama's opening to Cuba may have actually imperiled the reform process. Based in Havana, that friendly ties with the U.S. combined with a strengthened entrepreneurial sector at home will eventually undermine the revolutionary project that could lead to retrenchment. While foreign observers usually see the emergent private sector only in tourist-targeted restaurants and B&Bs. What? Yelenis Millet from the University of Havana shows a much more complex analysis of Cuba's shoe manufacturing sector. Based on field research, she estimates that the private sector associated with shoe production chain employs over 12,000 Cubans, making a sizable industry in the shrunken island economy. But restrictive regulations, the weak legal standing of many producers in the supply chain, and the lack of wholesale markets for production inputs raise manifold obstacles to the growth of this remarkable domestic sector. Meanwhile, the country is importing brand names just to sell in the run state-owned shops aimed at Cubans with sufficient access to hard currency. more participatory and democratic socialism. When Raul Castro stepped down as head of state in 2018, as he has pledged, his legacy will depend on both the results of the economic reforms he initiated and his agenda for political change. While he has forsworn transition to a multi-party democracy, he did promise to make Cuban socialism more participatory, the Communist Party more democratic, and the media more critical. And indeed, since
Okay,
Raul,
stop. I got that card cut. You could cut more from that article if you wanted to. Do you see something that you think you should cut? If so, let's go over what you think you should cut. Then you cut it, and while you go cut it, while you're cutting, I'll go get myself some food because I'm starving to death. Well, let's first decide what you should cut from there. What do you think after all the stuff you read?
um, well, I mean, one thing that I would like to point out here with the Raul Castro thing, where like he is already making steps towards that. So he's already taking the time. So why should we stop it right now? And because as we already said that the because I can also cut out the part about where the many of the Cubans were actually undermined by the revolutionary project when Obama came to Cuba. So completely severing the economic sanctions would just make it worse compared to if we continue on as it is right now, we're already letting them fix themselves for their own part. And then, I mean, because then if us already trying to work alongside Cuba forces them to undermine the revolutionary project and lead to retrenchment, then why should we try to take away the sanctions?
Okay, well, that's the argument that says in the status quo.
Yeah.
And you have that. So the link is between the which industry? The sugar industry specifically?
Was it shoe industry?
The what industry?
Shoe. Was it shoe
Shoe?
industry?
Shoe
They
industry?
talked industry, yeah.
Okay. Um, all right, so yeah, then I think you run that on that side. But I mean, the thing is, it's important to note that what ought to be said at some point, if you wanted to really debate the topic, is the core issue here is who is responsible for what's wrong. Who is responsible? Everybody wants to frame it as though it doesn't matter who's responsible for what's wrong. And
But okay.
and the answer is both parties are responsible for what's wrong in this instance because
Yeah.
they're each responsible for their own harms. And the U.S. seems to think that because he's doing harms, it allows us to do harms and get away with it. But two wrongs don't make a right.
Right.
So that's why we should actually stop the embargoes because in order to justify maintaining the embargo, we have to assume two wrongs make a right. That if Bob keeps stealing from people, that it's fine for me to beat his children to make him stop. But it's not fine to beat his children to make him stop because you're
Well, I
bad to
mean,
beat his children because they're not the ones who did anything wrong.
I guess so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, look, let's put another couple of links in here for you, and then I need to go get some food because, like I said, I'm about to pass out from starvation. But let me put a couple more links. See if you can cut some stuff and upload it. I uploaded that one card right there that yeah.
Yeah.
What is this? This one. So I mean, that's the thing. You've got to understand on framework level. Are you arguing it as Cuba's getting better and it's because of the embargo? If you're arguing Cuba's getting better and it's despite the embargo, are you arguing Cuba's getting worse and it's because of the embargo? Or Cuba's getting worse and it's despite the embargo?
So despite the embargo, Cuba's still getting better.
Yeah, actually, the last one will be Cuba's getting worse, and that proves the embargo is working. So let me put this here. Yeah, there's that one. Let me see what else we got. This one. This one. Already got that one. Already got that one too. Okay, that's it. Alright. Um, work on that for a bit. If you're here when I get back, that's cool. We can work some more. We can talk more about some of the articles, answer your questions and stuff. If you got to go for some reason before I get back, that's fine too. But yeah, I'll be back after I go to the drive-thru and get some food. Okay.
Uh-huh. Or
How you coming along, Lyle?
I haven't cut anything yet, Strauss, but I'm just reading out all of them first.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, actually. So, from what I'm understanding here, there are supposed reforms, but they're all having the same problem that they have with why we put the economic sanctions in the first place. Like, they're still facing the same problems that they faced prior to that.
Okay.
Except now, the problems have gotten worse because of something with the Venezuela where they stopped trading oil with them or something like that. And then all of a sudden that put them at a shortage of it. So now they have to make everything work together again and to make sure that their money doesn't fall down. The only solution is to stop trading with others for a little bit to get everything back to proportion.
Okay. So, I mean, look, as a general argument, obviously it's easier to say that the embargo does not work because it hasn't worked for 40 some odd years. So, the reason you might make the argument that it does work is because the recent death of Fidel Castro provided the necessary change of scene to be the warrant for that. So just be aware that everything does boil down to where the attribution of impact gets assigned.
Okay. So Strauss, for the negative side, if we really are gonna run something about, are we gonna run this where it's already working as it is right now in the status quo, or are we still gonna run the libertarian where like that weird argument that you brought up last class,
I mean,
where like we don't know exactly what they want or something like that?
well, I think the Brandon sovereignty argument will ultimately be stronger, but